Hi Math fans, today we are going to look at using a bit of Python in ArcGIS. Not something that we've looked at before, but this is a pretty good example of how you might use Python and an instance where it would be a good idea to use it. So I've received some CAD files, .dwgs, and they represent contours of an area. Now these have been chopped up to make sharing the data easier. So currently I've only got 10 in my table of contents here, but in reality there were a lot more. So I'm just using a subsection of the data as an example. Now what I want to get from these CAD files is actually just the polylines. So I could go through and export all of these to a GDB, but let's use Python instead, just for fun. So I've got the Python window open, and you can open that up here. Just by clicking on that, and the first thing that we need to do is import the library called ArcPy. So let's do that. We're going to ask Python to import ArcPy. So we just do that, hit enter, and there we go. We've got ArcPy imported, and we can double check that by typing ArcPy, and there's the module. Excellent. So now that we've imported ArcPy, we can actually get started with the coding that we want to do. And the first stage, whenever you're using Python, is to tell ArcGIS where your MXD is. So we need to make an MXD object. So I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it MXD. And I'm going to tell Arc to assign. So we're going to use ArcPy. Then the mapping module within that, and within that I am going to use the map document. So you can see that the Python window autofills for you. That can be quite useful. Just going to go for map document here. And what it needs is a path. So usually we'd use a file path. It's up to you what you do. I'm just going to tell this particular script to use our current MXD as the MXD in this piece of code. So enter that. There we go. Now I can type in MXD, and we should see that that is a map document object. Excellent. So just a reminder again as to what I'm wanting to do here. I'd like to export just the polylines from these DWGs into a geodatabase. So the way that I'm going to do this, and there's probably a multitude of different ways that you could do it, but just for demonstration purposes, this is what I've decided to go with. What I would like to do is ask ArcPy to cycle through my table of contents, and every layer that contains the word polyline, I'm going to get that one exported to a geodatabase. So in order to do this, the first thing I'll do is create a list, and I'm going to call that in features. So this will just be an empty list. So we'll call it in features, and that, the square brackets denote a list. So that's going to be an empty list. Enter that, and again we'll have a look at this object that we've just created. There we go. It's just an empty list. And we'd like to populate that list with any layer in our table of contents that contains the word polyline. And to do that, we're going to set up a loop, and we're going to cycle through each of the layers in our table of contents. To do this, we are going to use the list layers tool. So if we do ArcPy, whoops, where's my cursor gone? ArcPy.mapping. And then we can have a look at the list layers. And that is going to require, you can see over on the right hand side, it needs a map document or a layer so that it knows where to look. And we've created a map document, our MXD variable earlier. So if I put that in there, that should list all the layers that we've got. And you can see on the output, here's a list of all our layers, which is great, but we only want the ones that have a polyline in them. So I'm going to set up a loop. So to do that, I'm going to do for, and then each layer in our arcpy.mapping.list layers, and we'll give that our mxd object, and then I'm going to put the colon at the end, and that denotes that we are setting up our for loop. There we go. So you can see that our cursor over on the left hand side here has changed to 3 dots, and that means that we're in multi-line mode. So I'm going to keep typing and set up a little bit more. And once we've exited multi-line mode, we'll be able to execute our code. So our for loop is setting up, and what I'm going to do then is give it an if statement, and I'm going to say if the string polyline, if polyline is in the layer name, then we're going to do something with it. And what we'd like to do is append it to the list that we made earlier. So we're going to append it to our in features. So here we'll go with in features. That's our variable that we made earlier, our empty list, and we're going to do dot append. And what would we like to append? We would like to append the layer name, so lyr dot name. So let's just take a step back and have a think about what this for loop is doing. So we are going to cycle through the list layers, and every layer in there is going to be called .lyr, or rather lyr, and if that lyr object has the word polyline in it in the layer name, then we're going to append that to our in features list. So let's OK that, and it's run. Now we can check this by having a look at our in features. So I'm just going to ask Arc to print our in features. And there we can see we've got the layer names, and it's only the layer names that contain the word polyline. So there we go, we've filtered what's in our table of contents and put it into an object called in features. So we've got our in features. We'd also like to make a place to put these, so I'm just going to paste in a location. So we've got out location, just made that variable there, and we're going to assign to the out location this string. Now you'll notice that in the path name I've got double backslashes. That's just to ensure that these do appear as proper backslashes once it's in the code. So out location equals that string. Let's enter that, and again we can just double check. Let's have a look at our out location. And there we can see we've got that string. So now we have our in features, we have a location to output them to, and next thing we need to do is get a geoprocessing tool involved. So again, we'll call our ArcPy module, and in that we are going to use, I think it's called feature class to geodatabase conversion. There it is. So feature class. Helps if you can type when you're doing this. I could probably just choose it from the list below, but let's make it nice and slow so you guys can keep up. Conversion. Excellent. And over on the right hand side you can see in our window here, it'll tell you what this is expecting. So our feature class to geodatabase conversion would like input features, and it wants an output geodatabase. Fortunately, we have both of those. So our input features are going to be our in features list object, and our output location is going to be our outs location. And we'll close those brackets off, and we're ready to roll. So once I hit enter here, you'll see over on the right hand side it's going to tell us what's happening in terms of geoprocessing. And off we go. So it's running our script, and it's converting them one by one. So in just a few lines of code, I'm not sure how many lines that was, but now we can cycle through all of these, and obviously if you've got more than 10, the payoff of writing the code rather than doing it manually is high. Okay, so the result is that we have output those to our geodatabase, and let's go and take a look inside the geodatabase and just make sure that they're in the right spots. And if we go here, there we are. We can see that we have got all our 10 polylines in our geodatabase. So, fantastic. Quick way to get stuff done, start using ArcPy. I know it's a little bit codey, but coding can be quite a lot of fun and quite satisfying. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe, please like it, please share it, and if you've got any questions about this demo, or you'd like to know how to do other things in Python and ArcGIS, then please let me know via the comments. Thanks for watching and happy mapping.